In November of 2023, Fortnite would launch one of its most popular seasons of all time, Season OG. This throwback experience took players back in time to the Chapter 1 island, complete with old points of interest and the original set of weapons that the game released with. It was exactly what so many thousands of players had been asking for years, and the unprecedented hype did not disappoint. Within 24 hours of its release, Fortnite would shatter its previous player count records, having over 44 million different players hop on the game in a single day, accounting for over 100 million hours of playtime. For those of you that might not be so great with numbers, I'll break it down for you. That's a ton of people to be playing a single video game. This season would continue to be successful over its month-long runtime, ending with a bang in a grand finale event that saw over 11.5 million players online concurrently. Even almost a year later, this season is still revered by millions of gamers around the world, with some even saying it was one of the best Fortnite seasons of all time. I mean, surely with all the records it broke and the praise it gets, it must be, right? Well, yes and no. While the OG season is nowhere near the bottom of any tier list, it doesn't quite score the crown for being at the top either. Or at least, it shouldn't. Let me preface this video by saying that I'm not here to just hate on the OG season. I'm not particularly fond of hating on anything unless it's like really bad. Looking at you, Fracture. And obviously the OG season wasn't that horrible. That being said, there are a couple of different interesting things that crop up here, and with the second OG season on the horizon, I wanted to take a deeper look into these throwback seasons and some of the issues that may arise if they continue to happen on a yearly basis. Let's take a bit of a trip back in time to 2021. Fortnite's 8th season of Chapter 2 is coming to a close, and thus the entirety of Chapter 2 as well. The hype for Chapter 3 was perhaps greater than any other chapter launch in history, but not because of any massive feature or change that was promised. From Season 1 to Season 8, Chapter 2 holds the record for the longest Fortnite chapter ever, lasting a whopping 782 days. By the end of it, everyone was itching for a brand new map. Even myself, who considers Chapter 2 to be the best chapter of Fortnite, was practically dying for something new at that point. Being on the same map for such a long time has benefits for sure, but 2 years without any huge change was pretty rough. From this moment on, Fortnite would switch to the yearly chapter formula that they follow today, which has had several impacts on the game as a whole. For one, having the map get destroyed every 4 seasons makes it pretty difficult to keep a coherent storyline going. But more importantly, it has killed off so much hype that people have had for upcoming chapter releases. Now it just feels sort of like another day in the office when a new chapter is coming up. I mean, it's pretty easy to predict a lot of the things that will happen within the first few weeks of a chapter because it's happened so many times already. For instance, let's take a guess about how the upcoming 6th chapter will start off. There will be a new map, obviously, along with a completely new set of weapons that end up being boring reskins of old guns from their respective weapon class. I can practically guarantee that there's going to be a pump shotgun that does less damage with a slower fire rate than the OG one, as well as a tactical shotgun that will either be complete cheeks or totally overpowered. There's probably going to be some weird gimmick of a mobility item that has a bug where you die to fall damage when it's supposed to prevent it. Oh, and you also can't forget the big headline mechanic that either breaks a fundamental of the game or becomes completely forgotten within a few weeks. We'll have to come back and see how accurate my predictions are once it drops, but I'd say that's a pretty solid list. The problems with having annual chapter releases go on and on, but last year we got an extra 5th season that made Chapter 4 unique from Chapter 3. This was of course the OG season, and after all of the successes I mentioned before, it would go on to become revered in the eyes of the fans. It's no surprise that after its conclusion, Fortnite would announce that in 2024 it would be making a return. What they failed to mention is that it would be making a return in the exact same way as the year before. It's all but confirmed at this point that a second Fortnite OG season is taking place this November, and will be focused on Chapter 2 instead of Chapter 1, which, I mean, thank the Lord. If it were the exact same Chapter 1 throwback as last year, I would probably have a mental breakdown, but thankfully it isn't that. But oh ho ho, don't think we made it a whole year without a Chapter 1 callback because Fortnite Reload came out this June, which is a reincarnation of the OG map that is going to stick around. Don't get me wrong, I love Reload, but it is kinda funny that we made it barely 6 months after the OG season before we just got another version of it. Nostalgia pandering. Now, at this point you may be wondering, Blitz, why is this a bad thing? The last OG Fortnite was undoubtedly a success, so it makes perfect sense to do it again. You'd be right for making that observation, and I would also agree with you. The thing is, and I don't know if anyone else feels this way, but the return of Chapter 1 changed how I felt about it. I sort of always had it in my mind that it was just prime Fortnite and nothing was really ever going to beat it. But after returning to Chapter 1 and revisiting its interesting mechanics, I can't say that I have the same fondness for it as I did before. Of course, that doesn't mean it destroyed my good memories from OG Fortnite, but it sort of tainted them with the thought that it wasn't actually as good as I remembered. So many little things about the original Fortnite that I had never even noticed before became front and center, and not all of them were good. It might seem petty or even offensive to some of you to complain about the OG weapons and items, but a lot of them are just not good. You can stand your ground on the nostalgia hill if you'd like, but it's time to face the facts. The Scar is not a good weapon anymore. If you've used it in Reload, then you'll know that it gets outclassed by pretty much every other rifle in that mode. Same thing goes for a lot of those weapons that just don't feel satisfying to use because they don't do anything. Reload is dominated by all of the weapons that aren't from Chapter 1, with the two exceptions being the pump shotgun and the snipers. The pump shotgun because, well, it's the pump shotgun, and snipers because I don't think there's actually any snipers in that mode that aren't from Chapter 1. The best weapon in every other class is from a more recent chapter. So, the weapons weren't that good at Fortnite OG, but what about the map? That was obviously the big highlight of this season, so it has to be good. And I mean, yeah, I don't really have many complaints about the map itself, but the amount of loot on it is kinda pathetic. You were basically a sitting duck with no health before they added chug splashes to the game, because you'd find an average of like 2 big pots per game, and maybe, just maybe, you'd find a stack of minis too. I think the chug jug was actually more common than the mini shields that season. This wouldn't really have been an issue if it's what we were used to, but coming from Chapter 4 Season 4 that had slurp juice, NPCs, healing plants, and a much higher spawn rate for everything, it was pretty jarring. Chapter 4 was definitely a bit excessive with all that, but it was better than looting an entire town and only finding full shield for 2 players. Now, like I said earlier, it's not my intention to just hate on this season, but these issues were something that I had never noticed about OG Fortnite until they brought it back, which made my overall enjoyment and nostalgia for Chapter 1 drop substantially. I don't want to sound like someone who started playing last year, but I kinda liked Chapter 4 and 5 more than the OG season, simply because it felt more like the Fortnite I was used to. If you skipped on playing Fortnite from Chapters 2 to 4, you probably fell right back into the loop and thought it was the best thing ever. But for longtime fans, it wasn't really so cut and dry. With so many innovations over the years, going back to a primitive version of the game felt strange, and not really in a good nostalgic kind of way. It made the whole gameplay experience feel more annoying to play than it should have. It's a combination of these issues that have me worried about the upcoming Fortnite OG 2. Like I mentioned before, Chapter 2 is my favorite era of Fortnite, and I'm a little worried that revisiting it will result in tainting the love I have for it. There's certainly something to be said about being blinded by nostalgia and having your eyes opened up to the truth, but I think some things are better off left alone in your memory. I'm not sure if a Fortnite map should fall into that category, but personally, I would be okay if we never revisited the old eras of Fortnite and left them to live as fond memories that we'll remember for years and years. Now, there is also the matter of why Epic is wanting to bring these maps back in the first place. You could argue that they want newer players to experience how Fortnite used to be and appreciate how far the game has come, and that would be a respectable and noble cause. However, I think we all know that unfortunately that's not the case. Supported by the fact that player counts were dropping prior to the OG season and that it's coming back again because of how successful it was, the reason these OG seasons came to be is because it makes that sweet, sweet money. When companies focus on business decisions rather than what their community wants, it often results in a lack of passion and respect, especially when it comes to nostalgia trips. Thankfully though, if we ignore that horrendous skin rating system they tried to implement, Epic respected the old map quite well. The ending event especially was an awesome way to finish off the season and tied into the original end event in a neat way to bring the whole metaverse thing together. We can only hope that OG2 goes a similar way, but I don't think they'll do anything too crazy. The event is rumored to be a recreation of the device event from Chapter 2 Season 2. And I mean, it sounds promising, but I won't pretend like it isn't a little disappointing to have our big yearly event be a remake for the second year in a row. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I'm not trying to insinuate that OG seasons are just inherently bad or that I'm not excited to be going back to Chapter 2 in November. This was just a bit of a rant on some of the downsides these seasons can bring and why I personally wasn't too fond of Fortnite OG. I know this will probably be more of a divisive topic compared to what I usually cover on this channel, so I'm interested in your guys' take on everything. Do you think OG seasons are bad, or do you welcome this change to the yearly chapter formula? What exactly is the limit on how far they should go with them? If next year we get a Chapter 3 throwback, I think that would probably be pushing it. But having a Chapter 4 throwback in 2026 would be way too soon for that. Those chapters also aren't nearly as universally praised as Chapters 1 and 2, so it would be interesting if they tried it. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see. That's all I've got to say with this one. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more videos like it, and I'll catch you all next time. Peace.